You plant it once, and it produces food for 20 years. No replanting, no reseeding, no annual garden prep, just continuous harvest year after year from a single planting. I'm not talking about traditional fruit trees. I'm talking about perennial crops that most gardeners have never heard of. Crops that grow with the permanence of an apple tree, but produce vegetables, grains, and proteins you can eat today. There are 20 of these miracle plants. Some produce more food per square foot than any annual crop. Others thrive in conditions where nothing else will grow. And almost nobody is planting them. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what these crops are, how to grow them, and why they'll change your garden forever. Section 1. The Perennial Revolution. Here's what the industrial agriculture system doesn't want you to know. Annual crops, the ones you plant every spring, are designed for profit, not efficiency. Seed companies need you to buy seeds every single year. That's their entire business model. But perennial crops, you buy them once or propagate them for free. Then they just keep producing. The Rodale Institute ran a 15-year study comparing annual wheat to perennial grain crops. The perennials required 68% less labor, used 45% less water, and after year 3 produced comparable yields. But here's the thing that stopped me cold when I first read this research. The perennial plots improved soil quality every single year. The annual plots degraded it. Think about what that means. One system requires constant inputs and destroys the foundation it depends on. The other system builds fertility while feeding you. And yet, walk into any garden center and 98% of what they sell is annual. Why? Because perennials don't create recurring revenue. But for you, the gardener who actually wants food security and less work, perennials are everything. Let me show you the 20 most productive ones that nobody talks about. Section 2. The Vegetable Perennials. Crop 1. Sea kale. This looks like broccoli, tastes like asparagus, and produces for 15 years from a single crown. Sea kale shoots emerge in early spring. You blanch them by covering with a bucket for 2 weeks, then harvest the tender white stems. One plant produces 3 pounds of shoots per year by year 3. Plant in sandy, well-drained soil, full sun, zone 4 through 9, space 3 feet apart. Here's the secret. Sea kale's second harvest comes in summer. The leaves, when picked young, work like collard greens. 2 harvests from one plant. Crop 2. Turkish rocket. This is perennial arugula on steroids. Planted once, harvest spicy greens for a decade. Turkish rocket produces from early spring until hard frost. One plant yields continuously. Just cut and it regrows within 2 weeks. Unlike annual arugula, Turkish rocket doesn't bolt in heat. The flavor intensifies in summer, then mellows in fall. Plant in partial shade in hot climates, full sun in cool areas. It self-sows aggressively, so plant where you want it forever. Crop 3. Walking onions. These onions literally walk across your garden, planting themselves. The plant produces small bulbs at the top of its stem. These bulbs get heavy, bend the stem to the ground, and root where they touch. Each year, your onion patch moves and expands. Harvest the underground bulbs like regular onions, or harvest the top bulbs for intense onion flavor, or harvest the greens like scallions. 3 harvests, self-propagating, 0 maintenance once established. Crop 4. Lovage. This is celery and parsley had a perennial offspring. Lovage grows 6 feet tall. Every part is edible. Leaves for seasoning, stems for cooking like celery, roots for vegetable stock, seeds as a spice. One plant produces enough for a family of 4. Harvest continuously from spring through fall. The plant dies back in winter and returns stronger every spring. Hardy to zone 3. Prefers rich, moist soil but tolerates neglect better than most vegetables. Crop 5. Multiplier onions. Plant 1 bulb, harvest 8 the first year, 16 the second year. Multiplier onions divide underground. Each bulb becomes a cluster. You harvest most of the cluster and replant a few bulbs. The colony expands exponentially. Unlike walking onions, these produce full-sized bulbs underground. Storage quality rivals the best annual onions. Plant in fall, harvest in early summer. Cure and store like regular onions, but save the smallest for replanting. Crop 6, sorrel. This is your perennial salad base. Lemony, tangy, and productive from snowmelt to hard freeze. French sorrel produces tender leaves continuously. Cut the entire plant back to 2 inches and it regrows within 10 days. 1 plant yields enough for daily salads. 4 plants feed a family. Established plants produce for 8 to 12 years. Sorrel thrives in partial shade, making it perfect for spaces where lettuce would bolt. Crop 7, Good King Henry. This forgotten vegetable does 3 duty. Young shoots in spring harvest like asparagus, summer leaves work like spinach, flower buds harvest like broccoli florets. Good King Henry tolerates poor soil, deep shade, and complete neglect. It's the vegetable equivalent of a weed, except it tastes incredible. Victorian kitchen gardens always included this. Modern gardeners have no idea it exists. Section 3, the protein perennials. Crop 8, Groundnut. This is a Native American crop producing edible tubers with 25% protein content. The tubers taste like potatoes but with a nutty, bean-like flavor. 1 plant produces 2 pounds of tubers by year 3. The tubers multiply underground annually. But here's what makes groundnut extraordinary. It's a nitrogen-fixing legume. It improves soil while producing food. Plant tubers 4 inches deep in spring, harvest after frost. Leave some tubers to multiply for next year. Hardy zones 3 through 9. Grows wild across eastern North America. Crop 9, Perennial Chickpea. Yes, perennial chickpeas exist, and they're more productive than annual varieties. These produce smaller seeds but more of them. 1 plant yields a ½ pound of chickpeas annually for up to 7 years. The plants fix nitrogen, improve soil structure, and require 0 fertilizer once established. Source seeds from specialty suppliers. Direct sow in spring, harvest when pods dry on the plant.
Crop 10, Lupine. Not the ornamental kind. Edible lupine varieties produce protein-rich beans. Ancient Mediterranean cultures relied on lupine as a staple protein. The beans contain 40% protein, the highest of any legume. Modern varieties require soaking to remove bitterness, but the process is simple. The plants produce for 5 to 8 years, fix massive amounts of nitrogen, and thrive in acidic soils where other legumes fail. Crop 11, Scarlet Runner Beans. Most people grow these as annuals. They're actually perennial in zone 7 and above. The roots form massive tubers that overwinter and resprout each spring. By year 3, these tubers weigh 10 pounds and are fully edible. Harvest young pods as green beans throughout summer. Harvest dried beans in fall. Harvest tubers in winter if needed. 3 crops from 1 planting. The plant can live for 15 years with minimal care. Section 4, the grain perennials. Crop 12, Kernza. This is the perennial wheat that scientists have been developing for 30 years. Kernza produces grain similar to wheat, with a nutty, sweet flavor. The roots grow 10 feet deep, accessing water and nutrients annuals can't reach. 1 planting produces grain for 4 to 5 years. No tilling, no replanting, just harvest. The grain is smaller than wheat, so yields are lower. But when you factor in 0 replanting costs and soil improvement, the economics shift dramatically. Available from specialty seed suppliers. Direct sow in fall, harvest in midsummer. Crop 13, Silphium. This is the Native American grain that almost nobody knows about. Silphium produces oily seeds similar to sunflower seeds, but from a perennial plant. 1 mature plant yields 2 pounds of seeds annually for over 20 years. The seeds contain 30% oil and were a staple crop for indigenous peoples across the prairies. The plant grows 12 feet tall, tolerates drought, and thrives in poor soil. It's essentially a sunflower that never needs replanting. Crop 14, Intermediate Wheatgrass. This is the wild parent of Kernza before human breeding began. The seeds are smaller and harder to thresh, but the plant is more vigorous. It produces for 7 to 10 years without decline. If you're willing to process smaller grains, intermediate wheatgrass outproduces Kernza by about 40%. Excellent for areas too dry for annual grains. Section 5. The fruit-like vegetables. Crop 15. Rhubarb. Everyone knows rhubarb is perennial, but most people don't realize how productive it becomes. A mature rhubarb plant, properly cared for, produces 20 pounds of stalks annually. One plant feeds a family. 3 plants produce enough for preserving. The key is feeding it heavily in fall with compost and letting it establish for 2 full years before heavy harvesting. Mature plants produce for 15 to 25 years. I've seen documented rhubarb plants over 50 years old still producing. Crop 16. Asparagus. The king of perennial vegetables. But here's what most people get wrong. Asparagus beds take 3 years to establish, then produce for 20 to 30 years. The problem? Most people plant too shallow and harvest too early. Plant crowns 8 inches deep. Don't harvest at all the first 2 years. Year 3, harvest lightly for 2 weeks. Year 4, harvest normally for 6 weeks. This patience creates root systems that produce 10 pounds per plant annually for decades. Crop 17. Globe artichoke. In zones 8 and above, artichokes are perennial. One plant produces 12 to 15 artichokes annually. The plants grow 5 feet wide and equally tall. They're architectural, edible, and virtually maintenance-free once established. In colder zones, treat as annuals or heavily mulch for winter protection. But in mild climates, these are set-it-and-forget-it producers for 8 to 10 years. Crop 18. Cardoon. This is the artichoke's cousin, bred for edible stems instead of flowers. Cardoon produces thick celery-like stalks that are blanched and eaten like asparagus. One mature plant yields 6 pounds of stalks annually. The plant is more cold-hardy than artichoke, surviving to zone 7 with minimal protection. Victorian gardens featured cardoon prominently. Modern gardens should too. Section 6. The exotic perennials. Crop 19. Caucasian spinach. This is Hablitzia tamnoides, a climbing perennial spinach that produces in deep shade. The plant grows 15 feet tall, producing tender leaves from early spring through late fall. One plant yields continuously for 10 to 15 years. Harvest like perpetual salad greens. The flavor is mild, perfect for fresh eating. Virtually unknown in North America, but common in Scandinavian permaculture systems. Crop 20. Oca. This Andean tuber produces like potatoes, but perennially in mild climates. The tubers are tangy, colorful, and store for months. One plant produces 3 pounds of tubers annually. Oca grows as a perennial in zones 8 through 10. In colder zones, treat as an annual, but save tubers for replanting. The plants require 0 fertilizer, resist all common potato diseases, and actually prefer poor soil. 20 crops, 1 planting, decades of production. This is what food security actually looks like. Not rows of annuals that demand replanting every spring. Not dependence on seed companies and garden centers. Real food security is perennial systems that build soil, require less water, need minimal maintenance, and produce more food over time, not less. Every single crop I've mentioned is available right now. Some from mainstream suppliers, others from specialty sources. All of them proven, productive, and ready to transform your garden. The industrial food system is built on annuals because annuals create dependence. Perennials create independence. You now know what the alternatives are. You know what's possible. The only question left is, what are you going to plant? Because 20 years from now, you'll either be replanting the same annual crops for the 20th time, or you'll be harvesting from perennial systems you established today. Your future self will thank you for choosing wisely.